I think we've been raising a lot of questions about the work, and I also think that's fine. Like, that's round 3, and these are really interesting questions. So I'm okay if we continue to ask questions about the work while speculating about what the students understand.
I think the student understands some basic principles of algebra based on the answer in number 3. The sort of logic or reason he or she presents in framing the if this, then that, and it has to be one. I just feel like he or she could have framed this as an algebraic solution using exactly the same line of thinking they used in number 3.
When you say algebraic solution, you mean like representing with numbers?
With variables, yeah. Not teacher, alright, okay.
No conflict.
No monopoly on expertise.
I think like what's interesting about number 3 to me is that like I totally get what they're saying, but I also think that like if I didn't know anything, like if I hadn't done the problem myself, I would be really confused about what they're trying to explain, because I think there's a lot of nouns that are missing from the from it. Like for example, like the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit on Friday is 1 degrees Fahrenheit, because if you divide by 5, well, like what are you dividing by 5? And why are you dividing by 5? Like, there's no explanation that like we're trying to find the average, and when you try to find the average, you have to add all the temperatures together and then divide by the number of items that you have, So, like, while I think it's clear to me, I think that like the student understands. I think they understand what they are doing in this problem. It's not as an explanation. It's not complete.
Okay. Yeah, did that make sense to other people?
Yeah.
She's
Okay.
Yes. Doesn't demonstrate a comprehensive understanding of what a mean is.
Well, I think like it shows me that the student knows what a mean is, but like if but maybe that they wouldn't be able to explain it using the right words or using the vocabulary to a novice who doesn't
Right.
know what average is. Like if I didn't know what an average was, this would not help me figure it out.
That's fair. Did you say we're moving on to number 3 also?
Yes.
I would ask about the consistency in displaying work and answers. Just the disparity between number 1, the multiple formats, and then deciding to sort of revert to words here when the words aren't necessarily as complete as we would like. I would want to know why or what was the rationale behind that.
I think I don't know if like this student has learned algebra, but it can be difficult to represent like some sort of a sentence with numbers or symbols if you don't know how to do that. Like if you've never learned that you can represent an unknown as X, like I think that would be a difficult thing to write down in numbers. It's
That's
just,
fair.
I don't know that.
So you think that maybe the student wrote it in words because it was easier for them to write it in words?
Right, I think my general sense is that kids probably have, I do think this is true, kids have the ability to conceptualize unknown numbers before they learn the, like, the known,
Okay.
what's it called? the symbols for it.
Okay. So that is an assumption or
That's an assumption that I'm
interpretation.
making. Yeah.
Just want to clarify.
Oh, I don't have expertise, I don't know.
No. But you do have expertise. I just want to clarify that wasn't taken directly from this.
Right.
Like, so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
There could be other interpretations
Yes,
of what's
totally.
going on in the answer to.
I feel like all of the instructions were understood clearly. I feel like they're valid and legitimate attempts to follow directions and provide answers. I guess by similar logic, we can also, this is kind of what you were saying, but we can sort of interpret that the student has been taught multiple ways to solve problems like these. We see evidence of several different options.
So that sort of leads to one of my question is why the student decided to do all three. I'm just wondering if the student is doing all three just to verify her answers for each method to ensure that she's getting the same answer. I'm just
Checking
Checking
kind of,
the
that's a
one.
good question.
I was thinking of along the same lines, why the multiple displays of mastery. And my interpretation could be, I mean, I had two ideas. The first is to verify the answer. The second is to demonstrate to whoever is grading this that I have mastery of both showing and telling, or showing and explaining. And I can show in many ways.
That's interesting that you said that whoever is grading this, that we have this assumption that they're doing this for someone, or that someone will be looking at it.
As a proof that I know all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I make the assumption that this third part, the number line piece, is not to help the student understand.
Can you explain why you think that?
I think not having the tick marks on there and seeing the work go from left to right, and then sort of making the assumption that they've done those number lines after having done the other mathematical equations.
So you assume they work left to right?
I'm Western as hell.
It's just-
No, yeah,
It's fine, I just.
I did.
But you also noticed that there were no tick marks,
Right.
so it would be hard to keep, might be hard to keep track of where they are.
I agree with your interpretation, Cameron, especially because of like the lack of tick marks. But then, because they use, we talked about this before, so maybe I'm just turning it up again, but because then when they use the word distance in the second question, like that to me maybe they have a picture of the number line in their head. Like that seems very related to a number line and not related to this chart or the numerical equation. And as a side note, that's like how I think about positive and negative numbers in my head. It's distance. I imagine the number line, so I don't know. Maybe that's why I think of that.
I would be curious, I don't know if this is about the work of the student, but I'd be curious to know whether the student has a preferred method of showing work.
And to build on that, I wonder whether the student has not just a preferred but a perceived superiority of certain methods. Like, do words matter more than the formula? Is that why there is, I don't know, whether overcompensating by showing all these formulas for question one?
It almost seems as if there might be sort of a gap between the mathematical language and the verbal language. So just maybe with the distance things continue to show up, where the sort of awkwardness of the backtracking and number three is coming up, is that the written language hasn't been developed to explain it. It's very clearly and succinctly what's happening. But there is something that is very meaningful, which is that word distance, that idea of distance, that seems to be holding on, for me, seems to be holding on to a less complex or an unnecessary understanding of negative numbers for the student using those graphs.
So we're gonna do this for one more minute, just looking at the work.
Oh, I guess the student has also learned and understands how to add and subtract, this is pretty obvious, but how to add and subtract negative numbers, negative and positive numbers, however.
also learns and understands multiplication and division.
Yep, yep.
And average.
What makes you say that they understand average?
Because they calculated the average, even though they didn't explain it fully. Like they demonstrated that they knew they had to add all of the temperatures together and divide by 5. Right? Monday through
Yeah.
Thursday
Yeah,
was
Monday
equal
through
to
Thursday.
9. I mean, even though they didn't say that they added, but it's clear that they did. I think.
Okay.
I'm interested in the third answer. I think the degrees symbol disappears because I think it gets, we start getting confused. And I honestly think that it's like, we don't know exactly which of those numbers that follow should be degrees. Or can you add
Right.
degrees together and maintain like the
Very-
meaning of what those things are?
That's a good
Yeah.
observation.
Which is interesting because to even realize that, right? Like, because if you divide by 5, like she didn't, or he didn't put, degrees there, yeah, which is smart.
Right.
It's interesting.
Because I'm taking off the facilitator hat, just getting into the conversation, but 5 is not.
It's not
Degrees,
It's not,
it's
exactly.
days, right?
No, it's the number of temperatures there are.
Okay.
If you put days there, that would.
No, because it would cross off at some point. I remember the.
It would not cross off.
No, doesn't it?
No.
It's
It-
like math teachers.
I don't think that the goal
I
is to
remember-
decide. I
I
think
just remember you're dividing by.
You put degrees
No, I-
Fahrenheit on top and then days on the bottom.
So what? No,
So
but
then,
what are they asking?
so
for?
5 is actually unitless. It's
Is
a
that
number.
right?
Yes. I promise you.
but if
Have
you
you-
want to think of it as they added the temperatures of 5 days.
It
I
is,
can
but
understand why
it
you
is
would say
equal to days because there's one temperature per day, but
That's
it's
a coincidence.
actually
That's a
unitless.
coincidence.
But regardless, we can all agree
Yes.
that 5 should not be degrees Fahrenheit.
Correct. Or
Okay.
mentally.
Okay.